The Galactic Council had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. Every intelligent species in the known universe answered to them. Their word was law. Their knowledge was considered complete and perfect. Nobody questioned them. Nobody dared to doubt. At the center of their capital world stood a massive building called the Vault of Ancients. It was a museum, but not like any museum on Earth. This place held the remains of dead civilizations. It contained technologies from species that had gone extinct millions of years ago. Scientists from across the galaxy came here to study the past. Most left with more questions than answers. Deep inside this vault, in a chamber that few visitors ever reached, stood a machine. The council called it the Relic. It was enormous. It rose 50 meters into the air, made of a strange dark metal that seemed to drink in the light around it. Symbols covered its surface from top to bottom. These symbols were worn and faded, but still visible after countless centuries. The relic had been found 3,000 years ago on a dead planet at the very edge of the galaxy. A council exploration team had discovered it standing alone in a ruined city. They had no idea what species had built it. They had no idea what it was supposed to do. They brought it back to the capital and placed it in the vault. For 3,000 years, the greatest minds in the galaxy tried to make the relic work. Scientists from every species attempted to activate it. They used every form of energy known to exist. They tried every method of communication. Nothing worked. The machine remained silent and dark. Eventually, the council declared it dead. It became just another curiosity in the museum, nothing more than a footnote in history. Lieutenant Emily Park did not know any of this when she arrived on the capital world. She was a xenarchaeologist, which meant she studied ancient alien cultures. She worked for the United Earth Expeditionary Corps, and she was part of humanity's first diplomatic mission to the Galactic Council. Humanity was new to space travel. They had only discovered faster-than-light technology 40 years ago. Compared to the ancient species of the Council, humans were like children who'd just learned to walk. The Council barely noticed them. Some Council members thought humans were too primitive to be worth their time. Emily's commanding officer was Captain David Kim. He was a serious man with kind eyes and a quick mind. He had managed to get Emily a visitor's pass to the Vault of Ancients as a goodwill gesture. He knew how much she loved ancient history. He thought it would make her happy during their long diplomatic mission. On the day that changed everything, Emily walked through the vault alone. Her boots echoed on the polished floor. Her translator chip struggled to read the labels on the displays. Many of the languages were so old that even the best translation software could not fully understand them. She wandered deeper into the museum, past displays of weapons from forgotten wars and tools from civilizations that had turned to dust. She did not know where she was going. She simply followed her instincts, turning left and right through corridors that grew darker and more empty. Then she found herself standing before the relic. Emily stopped breathing for a moment. The machine was beautiful in a terrible way. It towered above her like a sleeping giant. The dark metal of its body seemed almost alive in the dim light. She felt something strange in her chest. It was a pulling sensation, like a string attached to her heart was being gently tugged toward the machine. She did not understand this feeling. She had studied hundreds of alien artifacts in her career. None of them had ever made her feel like this. None of them had ever seemed to call to her. Emily looked around. She was alone. The security cameras in this section looked old and possibly broken. There were no guards in sight. She knew she should not touch the displays. She knew the rules, but the pulling feeling grew stronger. Her feet moved forward without her permission. Her hand reached out as if controlled by someone else. Her fingers touched the cold surface of the relic. For one heartbeat, nothing happened. The metal was smooth and cool under her palm. Emily felt foolish. What had she expected? This thing had been dead for 3,000 years. Every scientist in the galaxy had failed to wake it. Then the lights in the vault flickered. An alarm began to scream. Red warning lights flashed along the walls. Emily tried to pull her hand away, but she could not. The metal seemed to hold her palm in place like a magnet. The relic began to hum. The sound was low at first, almost too deep to hear. Then it grew louder. The floor vibrated under Emily's feet. Dust that had settled on the machine for centuries began to fall away like snow. At the top of the relic, two enormous circles began to glow. They were eyes. Emily realized with shock. The machine had eyes. They blazed with golden light, so bright that she had to squint to look at them. The pulling sensation in her chest exploded into something much bigger. Images flashed through her mind. Stars being born. Galaxies spinning through the void. Beings of light walking across worlds that no longer existed. She saw things that no human had ever seen. She felt memories that were not her own. Then the relic spoke. Its voice did not come from speakers. It came from everywhere at once. It bypassed her translator chip entirely. The words appeared directly in her mind, clear and perfect and impossible to misunderstand. Bioscan complete. Emily trembled. Her legs felt weak. Genetic markers confirmed. Tears began to fall from her eyes. She did not know why she was crying. Cognitive architecture verified. The golden eyes looked down at her with something that felt like love. Like recognition. Like a parent seeing their child after a long time apart. Welcome back, Maker. Emily Park stood frozen in the light of the awakened relic. She did not know what a Maker was. She did not know why this ancient machine had chosen her. She only knew that nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. In the distance, she could hear boots running toward her. Security forces were coming. Soon the whole council would know what had happened, but Emily could not move. She could only stare up at the glowing eyes of the relic and wonder what she had just awakened. Council security forces surrounded the Vault of Ancients within minutes. Soldiers from a dozen different species filled the corridors. Their weapons were drawn. Their eyes were filled with fear and confusion. Nothing like this had ever happened before. High Arbiter Thelox arrived with a full military escort. Thelox was the leader of the Galactic Council. He was a tall insectoid creature with a hard shell and large compound eyes that saw in every direction at once. He had ruled the council for 200 years. He had never been afraid of anything in his long life. But when he entered the chamber and saw the awakened relic, something cold moved through his body. The machine's golden eyes burned like small suns. Its massive form hummed with power that made the air feel thick and heavy. And standing before it, bathed in that terrible golden light, was a small human woman. "Caesar," Thelox commanded. His voice was sharp and cold. The soldiers moved forward, but they did not get far. The relic's eyes flashed brighter. A wave of energy pushed outward from its body. The soldiers flew backward, as if struck by an invisible hand. They crashed against the walls and fell to the floor, stunned but alive. "You will not harm the Maker," the relic said. Its voice filled the entire chamber. It did not come from any single point. It simply existed everywhere at once. Every creature in the room understood it perfectly, regardless of their species or language. Thelox's compound eyes widened. "Impossible," he hissed. "This primitive cannot be anything important. Humans are barely more than animals." The relic's response was calm but firm. "Correction. This being is not a primitive. She is a descendant of the architects, the makers, those who built me, those who created the foundation of all life in this galaxy." Emily still could not move. Her hand remained pressed against the relic's surface. Information was pouring into her mind like water into an empty cup. She saw images that made no sense at first. Ancient humans, but not like any humans she had ever seen in history books. These people wore flowing robes of light. They walked through cities that floated among the clouds. Their technology was so advanced that it looked like magic. These were the architects, the makers. And somehow, impossibly, Emily was their descendant. The relic continued to speak. It told the stunned council members a story that had been forgotten for millions of years. Long ago, before any of the current species existed, the architects had ruled the galaxy. They had been kind and wise. They had seeded countless worlds with the building blocks of life. They had created the conditions for new species to evolve and grow. The insectoids, the reptilians, the aquatic races, all the species that now made up the Galactic Council. They all existed because the architects had wanted them to exist. They were the children of the Maker's dot, and then, for reasons the relic did not yet explain, the architects had vanished. They had left behind their sentinels, their guardian machines, to watch over their children. But as the millennia passed, the children forgot their parents. The sentinels fell into sleep, waiting for a signal that never came, until now. "I am Sentinel 7, the relic said. "I was built to protect and guide the children of the Makers. I was programmed to wait for the Makers to return. I have waited for 3 million years. Emily gasped. 3 million years. This machine had been sleeping for 3 million years, waiting for someone like her. The chamber doors burst open again. Captain David Kim rushed in with his weapon drawn. He had heard the alarms. He had fought his way past confused security guards to reach his officer. He stopped dead when he saw the scene before him. Emily stood surrounded by golden light. The massive machine loomed above her like a protective parent. Council soldiers lay scattered across the floor. High Arbiter Thelok stood frozen with something that looked very much like fear on his alien face. "Emily?" David said. His voice was barely a whisper. Emily turned her head slowly. Tears were streaming down her face, but she was smiling. It was a strange smile, full of wonder and sadness and joy all mixed together. "David," she said, "we are not what we thought we were. Humans are not new to the galaxy. We are the oldest. We are the children of the Makers." Sentinel 7 looked down at the human captain. Its golden eyes seemed to study him carefully. "Another descendant," the machine said. "The genetic markers are present but dormant. He has not been awakened." "What does that mean?" David demanded. He kept his weapon raised, but he did not know what to point it at. "What are you doing to her?" "I am doing nothing harmful," Sentinel 7 replied. "I am sharing knowledge. I am restoring what was lost." The Makers hid a small population of their people on an insignificant planet at the edge of the galaxy. They called this planet Earth. They knew that one day their children would find their way back to the stars. They knew that one day a Maker would touch me and awaken me from my long sleep. High Arbiter Thelox finally found his voice. "This is a trick," he said. "Some kind of human weapon. They have done something to the relic to make it say these lies." Sentinel 7's eyes turned toward the Arbiter. There was no anger in its voice, only patience. "I understand your disbelief. You have spent your entire life believing that your species was supreme. You have looked down on humans as primitives. But the truth does not care about your beliefs. The truth simply is." The machine paused for a moment. Then it did something that made every creature in the room gasp. It knelt. This massive machine, 50 meters tall and 3 million years old, lowered itself down until its great head was level with Emily Park. Its golden eyes glowed with warmth and devotion. "I have waited so long," Sentinel 7 said. Its voice was soft now, almost gentle. "The Makers have returned. My purpose is renewed. I am yours to command, Maker. Tell me what you need, and I will provide it. Tell me what you want, and I will make it happen. I have slept for 3 million years. I am ready to serve again." Emily reached out with her free hand and touched the machine's face. The metal was warm now, pulsing with life and energy. "I do not know what to do," she admitted. "I do not understand any of this." "That is acceptable," Sentinel-7 replied. "Understanding will come with time. For now, you only need to know one thing. You are not alone anymore. The Makers have returned to the galaxy, and nothing will ever be the same." Outside the vault, word of the awakening was already spreading across the stars. The galaxy was about to be shaken to its very core. The weeks that followed the awakening were filled with chaos and fear. News of what had happened in the vault spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Every species, every world, every government heard the story. A human had awakened the Relic. The Relic had called the human its Maker. Everything the galaxy believed about its own history was now in question. "High Arbiter." Thalox called an emergency meeting of the full Galactic Council. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered in the Great Chamber. They argued and shouted and demanded answers. Some refused to believe the story. Others were terrified by what it meant. A few quietly wondered if the humans had been right to be treated so poorly. Thalox stood before them all and made his decision. He demanded that humanity surrender Emily Park and Sentinel-7 to Council custody. He claimed that the Relic was Council property. He said that the human woman had somehow corrupted the ancient machine. He called her a threat to galactic stability. The human ambassador delivered Earth's response in simple words. No, humanity would not hand over one of their own citizens. They would not surrender a machine that had chosen to serve them. They would not bow to the Council's demands. Thalox was furious. For the first time in 12,000 years, someone had refused a direct order from the Galactic Council. This small, primitive species, barely 40 years into space travel, had dared to say no. The Council's response was swift and harsh. Trade embargoes were placed on all human worlds. Diplomatic relations were cut off. Council fleets moved into position around human colonies. The message was clear: submit or face destruction. Back on Earth, Admiral James Lee convened an emergency meeting with the world's leaders. He was an old soldier with gray hair and steady hands. He had fought in wars on 3 different planets. He had never faced a threat like this. Emily Park addressed the assembly through a quantum communication link. She was still with Sentinel-7 aboard the machine's command vessel, a ship that had been hidden in a fold of space for 3 million years. It was larger than most moons. It contained technology that human scientists could not even begin to understand. "The Sentinel has shown me everything," Emily explained. Her voice was calm but heavy with the weight of what she had learned. Humanity did not evolve on Earth. We were placed there by the architects. We were a backup plan, a seed population hidden on a small planet at the edge of the galaxy. Our ancestors knew that something terrible was coming. They wanted to make sure that someone would survive to continue their work. The world leaders listened in stunned silence. Some looked doubtful. Others looked afraid. A few looked hopeful. Dr. Michelle Torres, Earth's leading expert on human genetics, had spent the past weeks analyzing data provided by Sentinel-7. She stepped forward to confirm Emily's words. "The data matches anomalies that we have never been able to explain," she said. "There are sequences in human DNA that do not fit with natural evolution. We always thought they were junk code, leftover pieces from our evolutionary past. Now we know the truth. They are markers left by the architects. They are proof that we were designed." The room erupted in questions and arguments. But Admiral Lee held up his hand for silence. "The debate about our origins can wait," he said. Right now, we need to deal with the Council. They have surrounded our colonies. They are threatening war. What do we do? Emily smiled. It was a strange smile, full of secrets. We do not need to be afraid, she said. Sentinel-7 was not the only guardian the architects left behind. There are others. Many others. They have been sleeping across the galaxy, waiting for this moment. Now they are waking up. As she spoke, reports began flooding in from across known space. On the colony world of New Portland, Governor Robert Cho watched in amazement as a mountain split open. The rock fell away like a shell, revealing a massive machine that had been hidden inside for millions of years. It stepped forward on legs the size of buildings. Its eyes blazed with the same golden light that Emily had seen in Sentinel-7. I am Sentinel-14, the machine announced. Its voice echoed across the terrified colony. I pledge my service to the descendants of the Makers. How may I assist you? Similar events were happening everywhere. On ice worlds and desert planets, in asteroid fields and gas giant moons, the Sentinels were awakening. They rose from their hiding places and declared their loyalty to humanity. Each one was a weapon of unimaginable power. Each one had been waiting for 3 million years for this day. Within a week, humanity went from being the weakest species in the galaxy to commanding an army of ancient war machines. The Council watched in horror as their military advantage disappeared. Their fleets still surrounded human colonies, but now those colonies were protected by Sentinels. The ancient machines stood guard over human worlds, daring the Council to attack. High Arbiter Thelox received reports from his admirals. They told him that the Sentinels were more powerful than anything in the Council's arsenal. A single Sentinel could destroy an entire fleet. There were now dozens of Sentinels standing with the humans. For the first time in his long life, Thelox felt truly afraid. But he was also proud and stubborn. He refused to admit that he had been wrong. He refused to accept that the species he had dismissed as primitives were actually the descendants of his own creators. We will not yield, he told his council. We will find a way to defeat these machines. We will show the humans their place. But even as he spoke these words, doubt crept into his mind. The Sentinels had slept for 3 million years. What else had the architects left behind? What other secrets were waiting to be discovered? The galaxy had spent millennia believing that the Council was supreme. Now everyone was beginning to understand a terrible truth. The Council had never been rulers. They had only been caretakers, watching over a galaxy that had always belonged to someone else. And now the true owners had returned. The standoff between humanity and the Council lasted for 3 months. Neither side was willing to make the first move. The Council feared the Sentinels. Humanity feared starting a war that could destroy billions of lives. So they waited, watching each other across the cold emptiness of space during this time. Emily Park lived aboard Sentinel-7's command vessel. She spent her days learning from the ancient machine. It taught her about the architects, about their technology, about their dreams for the galaxy. But there was one thing Sentinel-7 had not told her. There was one secret it had kept hidden until she was ready. The day Emily learned the truth began like any other. She sat in a chamber filled with soft golden light. Sentinel-7's voice surrounded her like a warm blanket. They were discussing the history of the architects when Emily asked a question that had been bothering her for weeks. Where did they go? She asked. The architects were so powerful. They built machines that could last for millions of years. They seeded entire galaxies with life. Why did they just disappear? Sentinel-7 was silent for a long moment. When it spoke again, its voice was heavy with something that sounded almost like grief. The Makers did not simply disappear, the Sentinel said. They sacrificed themselves. Emily felt cold. What do you mean? The chamber around her changed. The golden light shifted and formed images in the air. She saw the architects at the height of their power. Their civilization stretched across the entire galaxy. They had solved every problem that had ever troubled other species. Death, disease, hunger, war, all of these things had been conquered. They lived in peace and joy. Then the images changed. The architects discovered something at the very edge of the universe. It was not a place or a thing. It was a presence. A hunger that existed beyond the boundaries of normal space. We called it the Void, Sentinel-7 explained. It was darkness made real. It consumed everything it touched. Matter, energy, light, thought itself. Nothing could escape it. Nothing could stop it. And it was coming. Emily watched in horror as the images showed the void pressing against the universe. Stars winked out as it touched them. Entire galaxies vanished into the darkness. The architects tried everything they could think of. Weapons, shields, barriers of pure energy. Nothing worked. How did they stop it? Emily asked. Her voice was barely a whisper. They did not stop it, Sentinel-7 replied. They could not. The void was beyond their power to destroy. So they made a different choice. They gathered every architect in existence. They combined their minds, their technology, their very souls. And they created a barrier. The images showed billions of architects joining together. Their bodies glowed with brilliant light. They rose up and flew toward the edge of the universe. When they reached the boundary where the void pressed in, they did not fight it. They became part of the wall. They used their own existence to hold back the darkness. The barrier holds to this day, Sentinel-7 said. The Makers are still there, at the edge of everything, using their endless will to keep the void from entering our universe. They are not dead. They are not gone. They are simply occupied with the greatest task any beings have ever attempted. Emily was crying. Tears flowed freely down her face. Her ancestors had given up everything, their lives, their civilization, their future, to protect a universe full of children they would never meet. They left us behind on purpose, she realized. They hid humans on Earth so that someone would survive. Someone who could continue their work. Yes, Sentinel-7 confirmed. And they left us, the Sentinels, to watch over their children until the new Makers were ready. But I must tell you something else. Something that cannot wait any longer. The images changed again. Emily saw the barrier at the edge of the universe. It was still there, still holding, but it was not as bright as before. Cracks of darkness were spreading across its surface like veins of poison. The barrier is weakening, Sentinel-7 said. The Makers have held the void back for 3 million years, but nothing lasts forever. Their strength is fading. Within a few centuries, perhaps less, the barrier will fail. The void will enter our universe. Emily felt her heart stop. What happens then? Everything ends. Every star, every planet, every living thing. The void will consume it all until there is nothing left but darkness. The weight of this knowledge was almost too much to bear. Emily sat in the golden light and tried to understand what she had just learned. Humanity was not just the descendant of an ancient civilization. Humanity was the only hope of saving the entire universe. Commander Stephen Yang was the first person Emily told. He was a tall man with a serious face and steady hands. He commanded Earth's newly formed Sentinel fleet, a collection of human ships working alongside the awakened Guardians. When Emily explained what she had learned, he did not panic. He simply nodded and asked what needed to be done. We need to warn everyone, Emily said. The Council, the other species, everyone. This is not about who rules the galaxy. This is about survival. Together, they prepared a message. It was sent to every world, every ship, every government in known space. The message contained Sentinel-7's records, proof of everything the architects had done and why they had done it. It explained the truth about the void and what would happen if the barrier failed. High Arbiter Thelox received the message in his private chambers. He watched the images of the barrier cracking. He saw the projections of what would happen when the void broke through. And for the first time in his long life, he understood how small his concerns had been. The Council had spent months threatening war with humanity. They had fought over power and pride and control. But none of that mattered now. The void would consume them all equally. It did not care about politics or species or ancient grudges. Thelox called an emergency meeting of the Council. The representatives gathered, many of them still angry about the human situation. But when they saw the evidence, their anger faded. Fear took its place. Then, slowly, something else began to grow. Determination. One of the council members, an elderly being from a species known for their wisdom, stood and spoke. "We have been fools," she said. "We have spent our time fighting among ourselves while the true enemy waited in the darkness. The architects created us. They sacrificed everything to protect us. What kind of children would we be if we let their sacrifice be for nothing?" Thelox looked around the chamber. He saw the same realization dawning on every face. The petty concerns of the past were meaningless now. They had a choice. They could continue their foolish war, or they could unite against the darkness. For the first time in galactic history, the Council voted to kneel. Not in defeat, but in recognition. They acknowledged humanity as the descendants of the architects. They acknowledged the Sentinels as the rightful guardians of the galaxy. And they pledged to stand together against the void. The war that had threatened to destroy civilization ended before it began. A new alliance was born in its place. The galaxy finally understood its true history and its true purpose. Now, they just had to find a way to save everything from the darkness that was coming. 5 years passed after the galaxy learned the truth about the void. 5 years of preparation, construction, and hope. The universe had never seen anything like it. Every species, every world, every government worked together for a single purpose. They would face the darkness together. Humanity changed more than anyone. Guided by the Sentinels and the knowledge they carried, humans unlocked secrets that had been hidden in their own bodies. Dr. Angela Reyes led the Institute of Ancestral Sciences, a massive research center built in orbit around Earth. Her team discovered that the architects had placed genetic memories inside human DNA. These memories contained instructions, designs, and knowledge that had been waiting for millions of years to be activated. Once unlocked, these memories transformed human technology overnight. Ships that once took months to build could now be constructed in days. Weapons that could actually harm the void were designed and manufactured. Medicine, energy, communication, everything advanced by centuries in just 5 years. The Sentinel fleet grew to number in the thousands. Ancient guardians stood alongside newly built human vessels. Council ships flew in formation with them, their old hostility forgotten. For the first time in history, the entire galaxy was united. Emily Park stood at the observation deck of Sentinel-7's command vessel. She was no longer the simple xenorchaeologist who had stumbled into history. She now carried the title of First Speaker, the voice of humanity and the link between the makers of old and the makers of today. The golden light of the Sentinels responded to her will. The ancient machines followed her commands without question. She looked out at the assembled fleet. Millions of ships stretched across space like stars themselves. Beings from hundreds of species crewed these vessels. They had come from every corner of the galaxy to stand at the edge of the universe. They had come to fight the void. Captain David Kim, now Admiral Kim, approached her. He had aged in the past 5 years. Gray touched his temples and lines marked his face. But his eyes were still steady, still kind. "The barrier is failing faster than we predicted," he reported. "The Sentinels estimate we have less than 3 hours before the first breach." Emily nodded. She had known this moment would come. She had prepared for it every day for 5 years. But knowing and feeling were different things. Her heart beat fast in her chest. Her hands trembled slightly at her sides. "Are the people ready?" she asked. "As ready as they can be," David replied. "The evacuation of the outer systems is complete. If we fail here, the galaxy will have time to prepare for the end." "We will not fail," Emily said. She turned to face him. "The architects held the void back for 3 million years with nothing but their will. We have that same will, plus 5 years of preparation and an entire galaxy standing behind us. We will not fail." Sentinel-7's voice filled the command vessel. "First speaker, the final calculations are complete. We have developed a solution that we believe will work. But I must warn you, the cost will be high." Emily had expected this. The architects had sacrificed themselves to create the barrier. Logic suggested that defeating the void completely would require a similar sacrifice. "Tell me," she said. The Sentinel explained its plan. The void could not be destroyed by normal means. It existed outside the rules of the universe. But there was one thing that could hurt it. One thing that could push it back permanently. The same thing the architects had used to create the barrier. Life itself, consciousness, will. "We propose to create a new barrier," Sentinel-7 said. "One that is permanent. One that will hold forever. But to do this, we need a focus point. A mind powerful enough to anchor the barrier in place." Emily understood. You need someone to take the place of the architects. Someone to become part of the barrier forever. "Yes," the Sentinel replied. "We have calculated that a sufficient number of Sentinels, combined with a descendant of the architects, could generate enough power to seal the void away permanently. The Sentinels would become the barrier. The descendant would become its heart." Admiral Kim stepped forward. "Emily, no. We can find another way." But Emily shook her head. She had known, deep in her soul, that this moment would come. The architects had given everything to protect their children. Now it was her turn to do the same. "How many Sentinels?" she asked. "All of us," Sentinel-7 replied. "Every Sentinel in existence. We were built for this purpose. We were built to protect. This is our final duty." Emily closed her eyes. She thought about Earth, about the blue oceans and green forests she would never see again. She thought about her family, about friends who had become like family over the past 5 years. She thought about all the beings in the galaxy who would live because of what she was about to do. Then she opened her eyes and smiled. "Then let us end this," she said. The battle began 3 hours later. The barrier finally cracked open, and the void poured through. It was not a creature or an army. It was the absence of everything. Where it touched, reality ceased to exist. Ships vanished without trace. Stars winked out like candles in a storm, but the fleet was ready. Human ships and council vessels fought side by side. They could not defeat the void, but they could slow it down. They could buy time for Emily and the Sentinels to reach the breach. Sentinel-7 carried Emily toward the edge of the universe. Around them, every Sentinel in existence gathered. Their golden eyes blazed with power and purpose. They had waited 3 million years for this moment. They were ready. "Are you afraid?" Sentinel-7 asked. "Yes," Emily admitted. "But I am also proud. The architects gave everything for us. Now I can give something back. That seems fair." The Sentinel's voice was warm with affection. "The architects would be proud of you. You have become what they hoped you would be. And what is that? Worthy. You are worthy successors. You are the galaxy's new guardians." You are the Makers reborn. Emily reached the edge of the universe. Before her, the void pressed against reality like a hungry animal. Behind her, the fleet fought desperately to hold it back. Everywhere, beings looked up at the sky and prayed for a miracle. She reached out her hand. The sentinels reached with her. Their combined power flowed through her body like lightning. She felt herself becoming something more than human. She felt herself becoming a wall, a barrier, a permanent seal against the darkness. The pain was incredible. The light was blinding. But Emily did not scream. She did not cry. She simply pushed forward with all her strength, with all her will, with everything she had. The void fought back. It pressed against her with ancient hunger. It wanted to consume everything. It wanted to end all existence, but Emily was not alone. The sentinels stood with her, and behind them stood the entire galaxy. Billions of minds, billions of wills, all focused on one single thought. We will not fall. The barrier snapped into place with a sound like a thunderclap. The void recoiled. For the first time since the beginning of the universe, it felt something it had never felt before. Resistance. True resistance. Emily pushed harder. The sentinels poured everything they had into the barrier. And slowly, impossibly, the void began to shrink. It pulled back from the universe. It retreated into the darkness beyond. The barrier sealed behind it. Not cracked. Not temporary. Permanent. Forever. Emily felt herself dissolving into light. Her body was gone. Her mind was spreading across the barrier, becoming part of it, holding it in place. She would exist like this forever, watching over the universe, protecting it from the darkness. But she was not sad. She was not afraid. She was exactly where she was meant to be. Back in the galaxy, the fleet watched in wonder as the breach sealed itself. The void was gone. The darkness had been defeated. They were safe. Admiral Kim stood on the bridge of his ship, tears streaming down his face. He had lost his friend, but he had also gained something precious: hope, a future, the chance for the galaxy to live and grow and become everything the architects had dreamed it could be. On Earth, Dr. Angela Reyes looked up at the stars and smiled. Somewhere out there, at the edge of everything, Emily Park was standing guard. She would stand there forever, along with the sentinels who had served humanity since the beginning. The Council declared a day of remembrance. Every species, every world, every being in the galaxy stopped to honor the sacrifice of the sentinels and their first speaker. They had given everything so that others could live. In the years that followed, humanity took its place as the leader of a new galactic alliance. They were kind and wise, just the architects had been. They helped other species grow and learn. They protected the weak and guided the strong. They became the makers they were always meant to be. And at the edge of the universe, Emily Park watched over them all. She was no longer human. She was no longer alone. She was part of something greater, something eternal. The Council had once called the Relic dead. They had dismissed humanity as primitives. But in the end, it was humanity who reminded the galaxy what it meant to hope, what it meant to sacrifice, what it meant to be the Maker's true heirs. The universe was safe. The darkness had been defeated. And somewhere in the endless light of the barrier, Emily Park smiled. She had come home.